Hello everyone, wishing you a peaceful and wonderful new day. Today, we're going to discover the emotional story of Triệu Khang after an old business partner suddenly finds him deep inside the bamboo forest farm and reveals a heartbreaking truth. His mother had been searching for him for years after he disappeared from the city. Will Khang return to his old life or continue protecting the quiet peace he finally found in the countryside? If you enjoy heartfelt countryside stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next videos. The morning after the old woman returned home, the bamboo forest surrounding Triệu Khang's small farm felt quieter than usual. The old wooden house still stood beneath the rows of bamboo, exactly the same as before, with bamboo trays stacked beside the porch and the vegetable garden stretching behind the house. Yet something inside the place had changed after her visit. Khang woke up earlier than normal that morning. He carried a bucket of water toward the garden, while the damp smell of soil still lingered in the air after a light rain during the night. Chickens wandered slowly across the yard, pecking at the ground near the bamboo fence, while the newborn piglets remained curled together beside their mother inside the straw-covered pen. Khang walked quietly between the rows of vegetables and slowly poured water onto the fresh soil where he had planted the seeds the old woman left behind before returning home. He crouched down beside the small patch of earth and gently pressed his fingers into the damp soil as though protecting something fragile. A faint smile appeared on his face when he softly muttered that the seeds had to grow properly because she would definitely ask about them the next time she returned. But the smile quickly faded. The words "next time" suddenly left a strange emptiness inside him because he realized how long it had been since someone promised to come back for him. After watering the garden, Khang carried several bamboo trays into the yard and spread beans across them to dry. His hands continued moving automatically, but his mind kept drifting back to yesterday. Every corner of the farm reminded him of the old woman's visit. The wooden chair where she sat near the porch, the bowl she used during dinner, the towel she accidentally left beside the kitchen window. Everything made the farm feel less empty than before, yet lonelier at the same time after she had already gone home. Khang finally sat down near the edge of the porch and stared toward the dirt road leading out of the bamboo forest. For a brief moment, he almost imagined seeing the old woman slowly walking back through the trees, carrying another basket filled with vegetables and homemade food. But the road remained completely empty. A sudden engine sound echoed faintly from the far end of the path. Khang slowly stood up and narrowed his eyes toward the entrance of the farm. Very few people ever came this deep into the bamboo forest unless they already knew exactly where he lived. The sound grew louder until a dark vehicle appeared near the bamboo gate. The expensive car looked completely out of place beside the quiet countryside surroundings. Khang instinctively tightened his grip around the bamboo tray in his hands as the vehicle stopped near the entrance. A man in clean city clothes stepped out slowly while looking around the farm with visible surprise. He appeared older now, wearing polished shoes already stained with dirt from the rough road, and carrying a leather bag under one arm. Kang immediately recognized him. "Mr. Min?" The man smiled lightly after seeing Kang walk closer. He admitted that he had spent nearly 2 days searching for the farm because rumors in the city said Kang disappeared somewhere into the countryside after the company collapsed. But even after hearing those rumors, he still never imagined Kang would truly be living like this. His eyes moved slowly across the pig pen, the rows of vegetables, the chickens wandering around the yard, and finally the old wooden house hidden beneath the bamboo trees. He quietly asked whether Kang had really built all of this by himself. Kang only nodded calmly and replied that he had managed most of it alone over the years. Mr. Min stared at him for several seconds before admitting that Kang looked completely different now. Kang laughed quietly and answered that maybe changing was not a bad thing after all. For a moment, silence returned between the two men. The contrast between them felt strangely heavy. One still belonged to the city they once fought so hard to conquer, while the other now stood in worn farm clothes with dirt still covering his hands from the vegetable garden. Finally, Mr. Min opened the leather bag and pulled out a thick envelope. He explained that he had not come all the way here just to visit. A large investment project in the city was looking for someone experienced enough to lead it, and several investors specifically requested Kang's return. The moment Kang saw the envelope, his expression changed slightly. But before Min could continue explaining the opportunity, Kang quietly refused. Min frowned immediately and tried persuading him to at least hear the details first, reminding him that people in the city still remembered everything he had accomplished before his company failed. But Kang calmly repeated the same answer: "No." The firmness in his voice silenced the conversation for several seconds, while chickens scattered noisily across the yard nearby. Min looked around the farm in disbelief before asking whether Kang truly intended to spend the rest of his life in this isolated place, feeding animals and growing vegetables. Kang slowly turned toward the vegetable garden and quietly answered that at least here he could finally sleep peacefully. That answer frustrated Min even more. He reminded Kang that he once managed massive business meetings and led hundreds of employees, yet now he spent his days carrying water, growing beans, and cleaning pig pens. Kang remained calm the entire time. Finally, he admitted something he had never openly said before. When everything collapsed years ago, he truly broke inside. The city only cared about him when he was useful, and once he lost everything, nobody stayed. Those words immediately silenced Min. For the first time since arriving at the farm, he stopped judging the place around him and truly looked at Kang himself. The city once knew Triệu Khang as a man who never slowed down, always trapped between ambition, pressure, and endless work. But standing here now was someone completely different, quieter, calmer, still tired, but no longer suffocating beneath expectations. Kang slowly walked toward the porch and placed the bamboo tray against the wall before quietly explaining that this farm never demanded anything from him. The bamboo forest, the animals, the garden, and the small wooden house allowed him to live honestly, without pretending to be someone else every day. The wind moved softly through the bamboo trees again as silence settled between the two men. Min finally slipped the envelope back into his bag and admitted that he understood now. But before leaving, he hesitated for a brief moment and revealed one final thing. Years ago, after Khang disappeared from the city, his mother had repeatedly gone to the office searching for him. She kept asking everyone whether they knew where her son had gone. Khang froze completely after hearing those words. Slowly, he lowered his eyes toward the ground, while a heavy tightness spread through his chest again. Until this moment, he had never realized that while he was hiding from the world inside the bamboo forest, someone had still been quietly searching for him the entire time. After Mr. Min left the farm, silence slowly returned to the bamboo forest once again. The sound of the car engine disappeared far beyond the dirt road, leaving only the rustling bamboo trees and the distant cries of chickens wandering across the yard. But inside Triệu Khang's chest, nothing felt quiet anymore. He remained standing near the bamboo gate long after the car had disappeared. The words Min left behind continued echoing endlessly inside his mind. "Your mother came looking for you in the city." Khang slowly lowered himself onto the old wooden chair near the porch and stared blankly toward the vegetable garden. For years, he convinced himself that disappearing had been the best decision for everyone. He believed cutting himself away from the city also meant cutting himself away from the disappointment he brought to the people who once cared about him. But now, for the first time, he realized someone had never stopped searching for him. The realization hurt far more than he expected. Khang rubbed both hands across his face before letting out a slow breath. Nearby, the pot of beans he had forgotten earlier still sat untouched beside the porch. Even the small towel the old woman left near the kitchen window suddenly felt heavier now. He slowly stood up and walked into the wooden house. The place remained exactly the same as yesterday. The old table, the bamboo walls, the bowl she used during dinner still resting beside the sink. Khang stopped near the kitchen shelf and quietly picked up the towel she had forgotten behind. His fingers tightened around the fabric while memories returned, one after another. The old woman waiting outside his office years ago, asking strangers whether anyone knew where he went, returning again and again without giving up. Khang closed his eyes tightly for several seconds. Back then, after losing everything in the city, he did not want anyone seeing him broken, especially not the people who once believed in him. So instead of asking for help, he disappeared into the countryside and buried himself inside work, isolation, and silence. But now, he suddenly wondered how many nights the old woman spent worrying about him while he hid inside the bamboo forest, pretending he no longer needed anyone. A loud squealing sound suddenly came from the pig pen outside. Khang quickly placed the towel down and hurried toward the back of the farm. One of the smaller piglets had somehow wandered outside the fence and become stuck beneath a loose bamboo panel. Khang immediately crouched down and carefully pulled the frightened animal free before checking its legs for injuries. "You little idiot," he muttered softly while holding the piglet close against his chest. "You almost got yourself hurt." The piglet wiggled weakly in his arms before calming down. Khang sat there quietly beside the pen for a while longer after placing it back beside its mother. His rough hand absent-mindedly stroked the animal's back while his thoughts drifted elsewhere again. Years ago, he used to think strength meant surviving everything alone. But the older he became, the more he realized loneliness and strength were not the same thing. As the afternoon slowly passed, Khang forced himself back into work. He repaired part of the old bamboo fence beside the garden, carried water toward the vegetable beds, and gathered dry branches near the forest edge for the kitchen stove. Yet no matter how much he worked, his mind refused to settle. Just before sunset, he finally stopped beside the small patch of soil where the old woman's seeds had been planted. Tiny green sprouts had already begun pushing through the dirt. Khang crouched down slowly, staring at them in silence. A faint smile finally appeared on his face again. "You really grew that quickly?" For the first time since Min's visit, his expression softened slightly. The small sprouts somehow reminded him of something important. No matter how damaged the ground once looked, life still found a way to grow again. A distant engine sound suddenly interrupted the quiet atmosphere once more. Khang immediately stood up and looked toward the dirt road. Another vehicle slowly approached through the bamboo trees. But this time, the moment the familiar small car appeared near the entrance, Khang recognized it instantly. It was the old woman's daughter. The vehicle stopped near the gate before she stepped out, carrying several bags in her hands. She looked slightly surprised after seeing Khang already standing outside waiting. "I hope I'm not bothering you," she said, with a tired smile. Mom realized she forgot a few things here yesterday. Khang quickly walked forward and took the bags from her hands. "You didn't need to drive all the way here again." She laughed quietly. "I didn't have a choice." She kept talking about the towel she left behind. Khang lowered his eyes for a second. "She really likes this place," he admitted softly. The daughter glanced around the farm while nodding slowly. "Honestly, I think this is the happiest I've seen her in years." Those words made Khang pause. The daughter continued walking slowly toward the porch, while speaking quietly. "After you disappeared from the city, she blamed herself for a very long time. She thought maybe she should have noticed earlier how much pressure you were under." Khang immediately shook his head. "None of that was her fault." "I know," she replied softly. "But she's old now. People her age carry guilt differently." Silence settled between them again as both looked toward the small wooden house beneath the bamboo trees. Finally, she turned toward Khang again. "You know, she was worried you hated everyone." Khang's eyes widened slightly. "She said every time she visited your old office, people avoided talking about you." The daughter lowered her voice. "But she never believed you'd leave without a reason." Khang slowly looked away toward the garden. The wind moved gently across the vegetable rows, while chickens wandered quietly near the porch. For years, he convinced himself disappearing was easier than letting people watch him fail. but maybe disappearing only left deeper wounds behind. The daughter eventually picked up the towel from inside the kitchen before preparing to leave again. But just before stepping back toward the vehicle, she suddenly stopped. "She wants to come back next month," she admitted carefully, "if that's okay with you." Khang stood silently for several seconds. Then finally, for the first time in a very long while, he answered without hesitation, "I'll wait for her." The daughter smiled after hearing those words. As her car slowly disappeared beyond the bamboo forest, Khang remained standing beside the gate, watching quietly until the sound completely faded away again. Then he turned back toward the small farm, toward the vegetable garden, toward the tiny green sprouts beginning to grow from the soil. And for the first time since leaving the city years ago, the wooden house hidden deep inside the bamboo forest no longer felt like a place where someone was hiding from the world. It finally began to feel like home. After the emotional reunion with the old mother, Triệu Khang tries to return to his quiet life on the bamboo forest farm. But her visit leaves a deep impact on his heart. While caring for animals and tending his vegetable garden, Khang begins questioning whether hiding from the world truly brought him peace. Everything changes when an old business partner unexpectedly arrives from the city with an offer for Khang to return and rebuild his career. As painful memories from his past slowly resurface, Khang learns that his mother had spent years searching for him after he disappeared. Struggling between loneliness, regret, and healing, he slowly realizes the farm is no longer just a place to escape his broken past. By the end of the story, the small wooden house hidden inside the bamboo forest finally begins to feel like a real home again.